What does a day in the life of Jordan Peterson look like? Which is this very interesting day. Let's look at the day when you have to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Preparing your mind, thinking of what you're going to talk about, preparing yourself physically, mentally to interact with the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Through the actual speaking, how do you adjust what you're thinking through?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you come down from that so you can start all again as a limited biological system?
Well, I'm usually up by 7 and ready to go by 7:30 or 8. And
Coffee?
no,
Nothing.
steak and water.
How many times a day steak?
That's all I eat.
How many times?
3 or 4,
3 or 4.
depending on the day.
Steak and water.
Steak and sparkling water. Yeah, so monastic asceticism, man.
Well, I did the proper. I usually eat just once a day. I did the proper Jordan Peterson last night. I just ate 2 steaks.
And how was that?
Was wonderful.
Yeah, well, if you have to only eat one thing, could be worse. So anyways, I'm ready to go at 8 because we're generally moving.
What does moving mean?
Flying.
You're constantly
flying somewhere.
Okay.
And we usually use private flights now because the commercial airlines aren't reliable enough and you cannot not make a venue,
Yes.
right? So that's rule number 1 on a tour. You make the show.
Yeah.
So everything, and then rule number 2 is anybody who causes any trouble on the tour is gone because there is 0 room for error. Now, no, there's 0 room for unnecessary, unaddressed error. So because there's going to be errors. The guys I have around me now, if they make a mistake, they fix it right away. So, and that's great.
There's a lot of people relying on you to be there, so you have to be there.
Like 4,000 people typically.
Yeah.
So then I'm on the plane, and I usually write, or often, because there's no internet on the plane, and that's a good use of time. So I'm writing a new book, so I write on the plane.
Typing or handwriting?
Typing. Yeah, typing. And then we land and we go to, it's usually early afternoon by then, we go to a hotel. It's usually a nice hotel that's not corporate. I don't really like corporate hotels. My secretary and one of my logistics guys has got quite good at picking kind of adventurous hotels, boutique hotels. They're usually in the old parts of the city, especially in Europe, somewhere interesting. And so we go there, and then lunch usually. And sometimes that's an air fryer and a steak in the hotel room. And I leave a trail of air fryers behind me all across the world. And then Tammy and I usually go out and have a walk or something and take a look at the city. And then I have a rest for like an hour and a half or an hour, half an hour.
Like a nap? Or
yeah,
just
nap. I have to sleep for 20 minutes. And that's about all I can sleep. But I need to do that in the late afternoon.
That refreshes your mind.
Yeah, that wakes me up again for the evening. And then Tam has to sleep longer. She's still recovering from her illness. And so she has to sleep longer in the afternoon. And that's absolutely necessary for both of us, or things start to get frayed. And so then we go to the venue. And then I usually sit for an hour. If I'm going to lecture, I've been doing a lot of Q&As, and that's a little easier. But if I'm going to lecture, I have to sit for an hour. And then I think, okay, what question am I trying to investigate? I have to have that. That's the point. What mystery am I trying to unravel? It's usually associated with one of the rules in my book because technically it's a book tour, but each of those rules is an investigation into an ethic, and each of them points to a deeper sort of mystery in some sense. And there's no end to the amount it can be explored. And so I have the question. The question might be something like, put your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Okay. What does that mean exactly? What does house mean? What does put mean, that active verb? What does perfect and order mean? Why before you criticize the world? What does it mean to criticize? What does it mean to criticize the world? How can you do that properly or improperly? So I start to think about how to decompose the question.
And you start to think which of these decompositions are important to really dig into.
Yeah, well, then they'll strike me. It's like, okay, there's something there that I've been maybe noodling around on that I would like to investigate further. Then I think, okay, how can I approach this problem? I think, well, I have this story. that I know. I have this story and I have this story, but I haven't juxtaposed them before. And there's going to be some interesting interaction in the juxtaposition. So I have the question, and I kind of have a framework of interpretation. And then I have some potential narrative places I can go. And then I think, okay, I can go juggle that and see what happens. And so then what I want to do is concentrate on that process while attending to the audience to make sure that the words are landing, and then see if I can delve into it deeply enough so that a narrative emerges spontaneously with an ending. Now, I'm sure you've experienced this in podcasts, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but my experience has been, if I fall into the conversation and we know about the time frame, there'll be a natural narrative arc. And then, so you'll kind of know when the midpoint is, and you'll kind of see when you're reaching a conclusion. And then if you really pay attention, you can see that's a good place to stop. And it's kind of, you come to a point, and you have to be alert and patient to see that. And you have to be willing to be satisfied with where you've got to. But if you do that, and then it's like a comedian making the punchline work. It's like, I've got all these balls in the air, and they're going somewhere. And this is how they come together. And people love that, right? To say, oh, this and this and this and this and this. Whack. Together. And that's an insight. And it is very much like a punchline.
Well, that's interesting because your mind, actually, I'm a fan of your podcast too, and you are always driving towards that. I would say for me in a podcast conversation, there's often a kind of Alice in Wonderland type of exploration.
Mm-hmm. Down the rabbit hole, man.
And then a new thing pops up. The more absurd, the wilder, the better.
Yeah.
Conversations with Elon are like this.
Yeah, I bet.
It's like, actually, the more you drive towards an arc, the more uncomfortable you start to get in a fun, absurd conversation because, I'm now one of the normies. No, I don't want that. I want to be, I want the rabbit. I want the crazy.
Yeah.
Because it makes it more fun. But somehow throughout it, there is wisdom you try to grasp at, such that there is a thread to.
Well, that's the thing, man. You're following the thread, eh?
Yeah.
The thread's
the
thread. Well, that's right. That's what we're trying to do. That thread is the proper balance between structure and spontaneity, and it manifests itself as the instinct of meaning, and that's the logos in the dialogos, and it really is the logos, and God only knows what that means. You know, I mean, the biblical claim is that logos is the fundamental principle of reality. And I think that's true. I actually think that's true. Because I think that meaning that guides you, well, here's a way of thinking about it. I've been writing about this recently. What's real? Matter. It's like, okay, that's one answer. What's real? What matters is real. Because that's how you act. Okay, so that's different than matter. It's like, okay, what's the most real of what matters? How about pain? Why is it the most real? Try arguing it away. Good luck.